Redditors who had a gunshot wound, how did it happen and how does it feel? Accidentally shot by a relative who was handling a gun they thought was unloaded. Entered lower left abdomen. Immediately hurt but got worse over the next 25 minutes till they got me to the hospital. Passed out as they wheeled me in. Wound up needing partial bowel resection and appendectomy and 6 days in the hospital. Now dealing with an intracutaneous fistula and abscess. 0 tenths do not recommend. It doesn't hurt as much at first as movies portray. The second it happens, it feels like you got a quick injection. It slowly hurts more over time. Horribly. My dad was shot during the Gulf War, and he told me that it felt like being jabbed with a cigarette butt. He said it felt sharp and hot. Was a negligent discharge from a friend that found its way into my back. Left me paralyzed as it hit my T12 vertebrae. I first fell straight back down to the ground and didn't feel anything, but then I felt extreme pain in my lower back, then the feeling of a hot liquid running down me. All I could do was tell and swear and grasp onto anyone that was near me. Obviously it was the worst pain anyone could imagine and I never again want to feel that. Edit. For everyone wondering, it was a .22 bullet that hit my T12 vertebrae. It missed my spinal cord but the impact caused paralysis anyways. Because of that my recovery has been well and I am able to move everything but my left calf and foot. I'm walking on crutches but still use my chair by often. Also yes, I am still friends with my friend and we have gone shooting together since. Some guys were trespassing, shooting ducks on our property when I was 14. I was chasing our pet calf around and thought I heard voices and went for a look. Saw the guys and turned to leave because I didn't care. People gotta eat, yo. One of them turned and fired towards me based on movement. Got my left shoulder and top of my back and neck from behind. I was wearing a swandry, a thick woolen farm coat thing, and it took most of the impact as it got reeked. Felt like lots of bee stings that didn't stop stinging. Then cold and aching. I walked back to the house and didn't really get what had happened. Getting patched up hurt more because of the digging around for wool fibers in the holes. Edit. Spelling. Well. Wearing a vest. It hurts significantly more right off the bat. The plus side being that it was a 9mm and was stopped from going on a joyride to the Lung Cafe. The other hit was a thigh wound that missed my femoral by a solid inch. It did, however, hit the femur, giving me a decent fracture. Felt like a bee sting for a second. Then my leg hurt like I was still able to support myself and return fire. Which was the scariest thing I've ever experienced. My recommendation: if you're going to get in a gunfight, don't. Accident on someone else's part. .40 Smith & Wesson Gold Dot hollow point into my upper chest. Out. Back in my bicep and out the back. Same bullet. 0 expansion and luckily didn't hit any bone. I've felt worse pain. The burning sensation was the most intense part. 4 years ago. You can still touch my arm and feel the bullet's path through the muscle. Got robbed on a bus when I was in college. Thief caught me sleeping, so when he started pulling my laptop bag, I resisted. The guy started shooting at the floor trying to scare me. Which didn't happen cause I was convinced it was a fake gun. Then, 1, 2, 3 shots. 2 on the right leg and 1 on the left. I felt nothing. At least nothing I can remember. Finally. My bag handle broke. He took the bag and ran away. I followed him. Jumped on him from behind and we both rolled on the curb. He got up first and got into a car that was waiting for him. I came back to the bus. Knocked the door and got back to my seat. Crying. One of the passengers was a nurse. She took whatever she could find and used it as a tourniquet. I was taken to the hospital in the same bus where everything happened. Luckily. The shot on the left leg was just a couple millimeters away from the artery. Otherwise I'd have died in less than 4 minutes. After the incident I was on medication for months to prevent clots. The heat of the bullet did damage the artery to the blood flow was affected. Also, one of the bullets broke my fibula which required surgery. Recovery took about 8 months and to the date. 13 years later. It still hurts sometimes when it's cold and humid. A friend of mine himself in the face accidentally with his mom's .22 pistol. He said it hurt eventually but he doesn't really remember the pain right off the bat as he thinks shock panic took over the pain. I was walking home from a movie and got hit in the thigh. It felt something like being stabbed with a burn. I was lucky that it was really only a graze. No entry. I sat on the ground for a few minutes. Then limped the rest of the way home. And bandaged up. It felt better after a few days. When I was 15 I dropped an old .22 LR revolver out in the woods, 70s model without a hammer block, and it landed on the ground facing upwards and discharged into my leg. I didn't even realize I had been shot at first as it hit a nerve and my leg immediately went numb. I thought I had gotten lucky because I thought it missed me. Then I pulled my pants leg up and saw blood. It went in just above my knee and ended up somewhere in my butt cheek. Doctors said it narrowly missed my femoral artery and the hollow point bullet didn't expand. So they left it in there. Gave me some antibiotics and sent me home. Turns out I was lucky after all as it traveled over 18 inches through my leg without doing any lasting damage. My leg was numb for about 2 weeks but has been fine ever since. That was 20 plus years ago. Since then I have taken gun safety very seriously. Long time ago, 1969. Rabbit hunting with a .410. Alone. 21 years old. Walking through tall grass, woods area chasing rabbit. Overconfident. Safety off. Tripped over a small log buried in the grass. Gun goes off. Foot felt like it was hit with a big hammer. Looked at it. Hole in the boot. Smoking. Panic. 1/4 mile from house. 35 miles from hospital. Got up. Hobbled to a farmhouse. They called ambulance. Took my boot off and gunpowder had cauterized wound. Finally got to hospital. Hole in the top of my foot about size of a dime. Hole in the bottom about size of a $50 with muscle hanging out. Fixed me up. Lots of pain after. Got infected. Looked bad for a while. But drugs did the trick. Ended up with one toe with no bone sewed together with toe alongside. Still have a few pieces of buckshot in my foot that will be there when I die. Still can hurt on some days. But once the infection was cleared up, no real problems. I had 3 gunshot wounds from a shooting at my middle school. 1 in the leg and 2 in the abdomen. If we are honest, the one in the leg hurt most. In the leg it burns and gets worse over time. It isn't the initial impact but the after effect before you get painkillers is the worst. In the abdomen the pain spreads and feels throbby. The initial impact hurts more on this one. When I was a first-year medical student I was super broke. I lived in a cheap rent apartment. I got shot in a gang initiation drive by shooting. Wrong place, wrong time. I got hit in my left shoulder, arm and neck. It happened so fast I didn't think it was real until I saw the blood. I even tried to convince myself maybe it was a paintball gun for a couple seconds because I thought there was no way I just got shot randomly walking down the street. Initially felt like someone slapped me on the shoulder after a bad sunburn. I reached up and felt the wetness of the blood. I remember jumping to safety behind a bush and starting running away scared I was going to be shot at again. Didn't feel anything until I got to the hospital. That's when it started to hurt. Had pain for a couple days. Felt like my whole arm was heavy for a few weeks and pain only with movement. Pain pretty much resolved after a couple months. Had some hypersensitive anxious moments and scary dreams for about 6 months after. Now realize was classic PTSD. All better now. I got a .22 bullet in the quad muscle. It felt hot. Got it taken out and it just felt like a bruise for a few weeks. I don't know how it happened. Once had a patient scream, "Ah, that hurts more than shooting myself." When moving him to operating room bed. Crazy sauce. But I can't imagine the pain. It's so much slower than in movies and TV. Thank you for everyone's responses. I find it interesting. It hurt like. My vision narrowed so much that it looked like I was looking through straws. I thought that saying wasn't serious until that. I got hit after a ricochet. And it got stuck under the skin of my index finger. That was over 30 years ago. And I'm still trying to get it removed since it hurts when I lift weights. The GPs I've talked to say I need to see a hand surgeon. But the hand surgeon I went to said it was too easy to remove for him since it's just below the skin, so said he has better uses for his time. Sucks to be in pain and have money so I can afford the help but to not get it. Burns like from what I remember. I passed out shortly after so I can't comment too much on it. Recovery was but I got to keep my leg. Technically. I've encountered bullets twice in my life. But I'm still iffy on whether or not either one counts as being shot. The first time. I was young, like maybe 7 yo, and it was a ricochet from a small rifle round off pavement, something around a .22 caliber I think. It wasn't buckshot. But the slug broke apart on impact and I only received part of the round, so it was small. It bounced up off the ground and lodged in my back muscle. About 1.5 inches from my spinal column. It was a neighbor kid, might have been 9 yo, showing off his new hunting rifle to his friends, and he accidentally discharged the gun because he didn't know how to unload it properly. His mom didn't know he knew how to get into the gun safe and his dad wasn't home. So they didn't even know to be worried about him playing with it. But he desperately wanted to show it off. I was playing with his little sister on the other side of some bushes in the yard. At first I thought I had been stung by a red hornet. Then it ached. For weeks. Looking back on it now. It's totally nuts to think about. But we didn't tell any adults for years. We just got the first aid kit from another neighbor kid's garage. Cleaned me up. Made up a story about falling on some barbed wire and getting cuts. And I stayed out of the sprinklers for the rest of the summer so I wouldn't need help with it. I think my parents didn't find out about it until I was 20. Because I had injured my spine and was having surgery. And it came up on the X-rays prior to surgery. The second time. I was pinned down in a park while 2 gang members exchanged fire. And one of their bullets grazed my thigh muscle. Wrong place. Wrong time. I knew the feeling by then. So it wasn't super shocking. But scary nonetheless. Probably the scariest thing I've ever been through. Hiding in a jungle gym with 2 younger kids. Trying to keep them from being a distraction. As far as I know. I was the only casualty that day. But I wasn't paying much attention to the gang members. I was more focused on the bystanders. When it was all over, the EMTs showed up with the cops. I got a couple glue stitches and a gauze wrap. And on my way I went. I don't remember the pain the second time. Just a vague memory of a burning flesh sensation. Like if somebody had stuck a lit cigarette to my leg. But I'm pretty sure that's mostly because of adrenaline. Again. It ached for a while after. A couple of weeks at least. I have a handful of scars. But these are both pretty faded. Still a fun story or two for a pretty nondescript middle-class middle American housewife-looking lady to tell when somebody notices them at the neighborhood pool. Lol.